This is Field Tech Readiness. The mission is about to begin.
You're not ready for what is about to happen and what is coming. Let's get into it. Now, I want to preface this video by letting people know that I've spent more than 35 years helping people to be prepared, to be self-reliant, to become better stewards of their own life and their own destinations of how things are going to go. And those efforts really ramped up in the mid-90s with the oncoming of Y2K, when the calendar flipped from 1999 to 2000. And I formally began a business called Field Tech Self-Reliance in 1998. Now, I had already been teaching people through most of the 90s, helping them, consulting with them, teaching them skills, teaching them how to set up their homes, giving them ideas on what they could do to be prepared in case Y2K did happen. Now, personally, did I think that the world was going to shut down when it hit January 1st at midnight in 2000? Not completely. But I did think there was going to be some mild disruptions. Luckily, there weren't really any disruptions to speak of, and things just continued on. But people still continued to prepare because the mindset had gotten to the point of, well, if Y2K can happen, something else can happen. And that's completely true. We don't know when or if or how things are going to happen. 2005, we had Katrina. At the time I was driving truck, I was delivering pods to Louisiana for temporary mobile housing. I was down in Katrina in the aftermath of it. I saw how things played out. I saw how neighborhoods were literally torn apart and figuratively torn apart because the people there turned into savages. When I was driving semi and taking the pods down there on a flatbed semi-trailer, I had a FEMA tag on my truck and I was able to run. I had no restrictions on hours. I had no logbooks. With that FEMA placard on the side of my truck, I had carte blanche to travel between Hood River, Oregon and Louisiana to deliver as many pods as I could. When we got to the areas where we were going to deliver, we were told there was police, actual barricades set up. And the police checkpoint told us, you have until 5:59 p.m. to get in, deliver, and get out. If not, you're locked in, because they had curfews. 6 p.m., all the roads were shut down. No one was going in or out unless they were an emergency vehicle. Now, even though I had the FEMA placard on the side, it didn't matter. They were locking down the roads, and that was it. You weren't leaving until 6 a.m. the next morning. So 12 hours I'd have been down. Well, that 12 hours, I had a lot of driving to do, so I had to be in and out. But my point is that driving into those areas, I saw how people acted. There was no community. There was no, let's all sing Kumbaya, gather our resources, sit around a campfire, and just rest in peace until daylight came. No, it was every man for themselves, period. And the police told us that. Now, news media was not reporting this because they did not want the people, the general population, to know these things. But I was there. I saw it. I was in the midst of dealing with the state FEMA, the State Emergency Management Authority. I was dealing with local police, county police, state police. I heard what was going on. I knew what was going on. And being in the business of teaching self-reliance and teaching people how to be prepared and self-sustainable, of course, it increased my curiosity as to what was going on and how things were actually being handled. Houses were being stripped. Houses were being raided, being looted. There were marauding groups that were moving around. Now, the police did what they could, but there was people picking up whatever they could find. axes, bats, tire irons, whatever they could find as a weapon, they were carrying with them to go around and find resources. Because when something like this happens, when an SHTF event like Katrina happens, people lose common sense, if they have any to begin with, and they go off they become instinctual animals. I don't care what anybody tells you. We are animals. We're all part of the animal kingdom. We are just a more evolved, I guess if you want to say, animal than the four-legged animals. But we are an animal, no less. And people don't default to, oh, let me help my neighbor, let me be a good Samaritan. No, they default to, I need to survive, and I'm going to do what I need to do to survive. I've seen it firsthand. Groups that I've trained throughout the years, I have dealt with numerous groups. I've trained them as a group. I had doctors and lawyers and mostly people in white-collar positions who were worried about things going to hell in a handbasket, wanting their community to be safer. So I trained groups anywhere from 7 people in a group up to 30 people in a group. The community, as everyone talks about, you have to get community. It doesn't work that way. Of the groups, of the hundreds of groups that I've dealt with over the last 35 years, 99% of them end up disbanding and taking for themselves what they learned for their family. They don't care about the community. They don't care about being in some communal type situation. They care. And I'm going to tell you why. I had individuals in groups throughout the years come up to me and say, I feel a little leery about Joe over there, or I'm feeling leery about Bob over there, or I don't really think that Joe has our best interest as a group. I think he could be a problem. People suss this out when you're getting into training and you're getting into trying to build a community. It's not what people think it is. It's not like what you see in the movies. It's absolutely not. I've been through this with groups. I have seen numerous groups where doctors and lawyers. Now, I got to say, yeah, they're intelligent people as far as practicing law or practicing medicine to a degree, but their common sense leaves a lot to be desired. And that's often true with people who are highly intelligent in those types of areas, who are very academic. They don't generally have a lot of common sense. And with the community, one of the things that you always have to think about is there's always going to be a weak link, like in a chain. And that weak link can take down the entire community. And I know this is a TV show, but I'm going to reference The Walking Dead, because a lot of what I saw in The Walking Dead is what I saw dealing with these groups that I trained and that I consulted with. I saw it time and time and time again. Community is not what you think it is or what you think it's going to be. People have an idea from what they see in TV shows or what they see in movies, where you see these people sitting in pickup trucks. They put up fences and gates and they're blocking the road, not letting people in and out, just sitting around, while you see someone in a distant community and people are walking around like it's a sunny day in Florida, 70 degrees, and everything's just fine. That's not reality. That's not reality. There may be groups, but those groups that are going to be together are going to be the marauders that are looking to gain whatever they can. And even in a group of marauders, there is no loyalty. There is no camaraderie. There is every man for themselves. And that is exactly how it's going to be. If you have a family and you value your family, you will prepare for your family. You will do what you have to do to protect you and your family. Now, if you have a homestead, like you see a lot of these preppers on YouTube and other social media platforms. They have these homesteads. They think they're going to get a community and they're going to patrol it. And that's not reality. It is not reality. I don't care what people think or what people say or how many people are going to come at me in the comments. I have seen it through the training of people and groups that I have done throughout the 35 years that I've been doing it. Like I said, again, 99% of them disbanded, and the people went and worried about themselves. Now, I've had people that were in these groups that have come to me after the groups disbanded, and they've said, you know what? I feel much better now in my preparedness and in my self-reliance and self-sustainability, because I know that what I've learned, I can put that into my family. The other myth that I want to debunk is this staying put and bugging in at people. That is not reality either. You cannot contain yourself in your home or your homestead or on your property for any long period of time. It's not reality. There's going to be someone that's going to come along and they're going to be able to overpower and take what you have or break down or destroy what you have. That is the nature of people. I saw it down in Louisiana firsthand with Katrina. Like I said, other areas that I went down there, I saw it. People that lived in neighborhoods that I'm sure they knew their neighbors. They didn't care. It was every man for themselves because they weren't sure where their next meal was coming from. Could they find potable water? I mean, I had groups that would try to approach me as I was driving through with the pods. And we had to keep the pod doors open, strapped open when we were driving through so people could see that we had nothing in those pods. They were just empty steel boxes, basically. Because otherwise, they would attack a truck and they would try to see and take whatever you had. As you can see, that happens in riots going on in LA and Minneapolis and Atlanta and other places around the country. You see these riots going on. You see vehicles being broken into. If people think you're a certain kind of person, they're breaking into vehicles and they're looting the vehicles. That is the reality of how things are going to be on a nationwide scale if and when the shit hits the fan. And the other thing you're not prepared for is the fact that these riots, these people that are rioting, these people that are protesting, they call them protests, they're rioting, they're riots. And why nothing is being done about it is because they don't want anything to be done about it. They're testing our resolve as people who don't do that, who are not mentally ill. They're testing our resolve to see how far they can push us. Amidst all of this that's going on, we're having cell phone outages and internet outages and this going down and that going down. This isn't coincidence, people. This is being done on purpose. We have healthcare workers threatening to unalive people who might need medical help if they think that they're of a certain mindset or a certain ideology. That is not normal behavior. People are not inherently good. They're inherently evil. But the good in them has to be kept in check. And that's why we have things like laws to keep people in check. Otherwise, there would be no morality in this country or in this world if there were not laws and punishments for being unlawful and doing harm unto people for no reason other than, I feel like unaliving somebody. Like these nurses and these doctors that you hear that are threatening to unalive people that work for the federal government or who have a certain ideology that doesn't align with theirs. You're not ready for what's coming. And I'm telling you right now, you better get in a guerrilla tactics mindset pretty damn quick, because that is the reality of what you need. If you're not the kind of person who can neutralize a threat quick, fast, and in a hurry, then it could be your life that is neutralized. And I'm going to tell you something right now. My precious gift of life, it's not up for debate. I have one life. I was given one precious gift of life. And I'll be damned if I'm going to let it be snuffed out by some mentally ill whack job that doesn't like the way I look, the color of my skin, my ideology, or whatever else it might be. And I mean, for all things that are intelligent, people need to quit walking around broadcasting on their bodies or on their vehicles where their stance is. You need to be stealth. You need to be the gray man. And I see a lot of people still walking around with MAGA hats and all these t-shirts with symbolism on them. Get rid of that crap. If you having your ideology and your thoughts and the way you think things should be, I'm not trying to take that away from you. I have mine, but I'll tell you what, I do not, and I have not ever gone around broadcasting how I feel, what side I'm on, who I'm for, who I'm against. I do none of that. Because it's nobody else's business for out in the public to know what my stance is. Now, online, yeah, I'll post it online. But I don't go around, and I don't put it in videos. I sure as hell don't put, any kind of symbolism or any kind of advertising as to my position and my stance in videos. Because that's when people are going to find you. They're going to try to dox you. They're going to try to hunt you down. You're not prepared. You're not mentally prepared. You're not emotionally prepared for what is coming and what is happening. I see people in videos online all the time. They're saying, I don't understand. How can these people do that? You cannot understand people who are mentally ill. And these rioters are mentally ill people. We're allowing the patients to run the asylum, and it has to stop. You better learn to become a guerrilla tactician. I don't mean like an actual guerrilla. I mean a GUERRILLA, guerrilla, a guerrilla tactician in protecting yourself, protecting your family, protecting what is yours. Because I sure as hell am. And everybody that I've trained throughout the years is too. We're not the kind of people, and you're not going to find the people that I've trained on social media. I wasn't on, I had this channel, but I never really posted much. I posted a couple things 2 years ago, 1 year ago, but I never really posted much because I was still active in consulting and training people. But now it's come to the point where people need to hear the truth of what is happening out there and the truth of how things are. And I'm telling you right now, all this trying to build a community bullshit is not reality. It doesn't work that way. Even I've traveled around the world. I've been hunting in Africa. I've been to Australia. I've been to Peru. I've been to other countries. And I see how people are. Peru, the 𝙒𝙀𝘼𝘼𝘿𝙔 Indians that I spent time with, if they thought somebody had stolen from them or had done something to them, they doled out some harsh punishments. They weren't all kumbaya, let's all sit around. And they were very dedicated to their hierarchy within the tribe. Same with when I was in Africa with the tribes that I've spent time with in Africa. There wasn't always very communal. There was thievery that went on within the tribes. And if they found out somebody was a thief, they dealt with them harshly. The point is that just because somebody's in a tribe or a clan does not mean that everybody's going to mesh and everybody's going to get along and everything's just going to be hunky-dory, because as a clan or a tribe or a community or a group, we're all going to mesh and everything's just going to be great. This guy's going to be this and this guy's going to be that and she's going to do this and she's going to do that. That's not reality. You're always going to have a weak link in that chain. And when you have the weak link in the chain, it's going to break and the whole thing's going to come crumbling down. And when you do have that happen, and I guarantee it will happen at some point, somebody's going to become a traitor, either for more food or more money or more whatever, more status or whatever they're offered in exchange for giving intel away. you're going to have that collapse within the group, the community, the tribe, the clan. It will happen. And it leaves people devastated, because the problem is that people form bonds and they figure, well, you know, we were so close, we were this or we were that. Doesn't matter. People have it's ingrained in them for self-survival, self-preservation. That's how people are. I'm a self-preservationist. Me and my immediate family, that's all I care about. I don't care about the community. I'm not living to appease a community or to prop up a community. I have one life. I have my life. I only get one ride on this merry-go-round of life, and I'm not going to waste it when out there I know, firsthand knowledge know, that if I were to get into a community, somebody's going to shit on me. And then I'm right back at square one. Why would I do that instead of avoiding it and eliminate that problem out of my life? Because I'm telling you right now, that will happen. Even in my family, not my immediately unto me family, but even in my family, with cousins and other relations in my family, I would not trust any one of them. I'm going to tell you one reason is because their ideology and my ideology do not align. They are 100%, 180% on the other end of the scale from me. And I know they're intelligent. I've grown up with them. I have cousins I spent time with growing up. We hung out together. We did things together. But at this point, nothing to do with them. I don't care one thing about them anymore. Because I know their ideology, I know their thoughts on things, and I know how they would be if I tried to be in a community with my own family. Not worth it, because I don't trust them. Knowing their ideology, knowing they're 180 degrees opposed to me, I would not trust them as far as I could see them. So I have no use for them. And it may be, some people might be like, oh, that's pretty harsh. It's reality. It is reality. And I'm not going to risk or give up my precious gift of life because some moron has decided that they're more important, or they're more this, or they're more that. That's fine if they feel they're more important, and they should feel they're more important to them. They can go do their own thing by themselves, because that is people's mentality. I don't care what you try to say or what you put in the comments. I'm telling you the reality of what I've seen in 35 years of training people, of working with people, and dealing with this very thing to try to get people set up in these communities that ultimately ended up disbanding. And these were people that were very good friends. Doctors and lawyers that hung out together. They went to the country club together, played golf together, played tennis together, did all this together, did dinner parties and all that. And now they're all separated. They're all doing their own thing. They realized that whole community thing was a farce and a lie. And it gained them nothing by being in that. It put them more at risk being in that community, trying to rely on those people. So, even the women in these groups, the women of the men that were in these groups, and I have to tell you, most of the women, I would say 70%ish of the women got on board with the whole self-reliance, preparedness, being self-sustainable. And even the women were, I don't trust her. I don't trust her. Individually they came to me, I don't really trust, Sandy, or I don't trust Peggy, or I don't trust Ann, or I don't trust Jane. I had consultations with numerous people about this, that they didn't trust after being together and seeing how things were going and watching the dynamics of the groups. They didn't trust them because I gave them all things that they needed to look out for. what I did is I made up packets for people that came to me and wanted to build a community, wanted to learn what they needed. I gave them packets. I gave them checklists. In the packets, I gave them things to look for, psychological things to look for. And you might say, well, what's your psychology background? I was a paramedic. I spent a decade as a paramedic. And my minor was criminal psychology. And my uncle was the sheriff of the county where I went to school. And I had access to the jail where I got to interview people in jail and find out their mindsets. It was a great learning experience, because I took away from that you can never understand what someone who is of a criminal mind, how their mind works. If you don't have those tendencies, if you don't have those compunctions to be a criminal, you can never understand. Because if you don't have that predilection for whatever it is, you cannot understand how someone could have that predilection. It's just basic psychology, and it's very true. So, that's where the psychology part came from. I've studied people. I've studied psychology since I was in high school. We had psychology class in high school that I took. That was my introduction. Then I did it when I was in college for my EMT and paramedic training, and it was fascinating to learn all about that area of how people's minds work, and the fact of when I interviewed people who had done horrific things like abuse a child or essay a woman, or I even had women who essayed men, and in their minds they didn't see anything wrong with it. They wanted it and they were there, so they took what they wanted. I mean, that is a sociopathic mindset. And I mean, it was amazing. And most criminals, most people who have criminal intentions have a sociopathic mindset. When they begin their criminal activities, they're of a sociopathic and psychopathic mindset. Psychopathy was so prevalent in 100% of the people that I spoke with and I interviewed for my class. And you can't understand it if you don't have those thoughts and those predilections. You cannot understand where they're coming from and why they do what they do. It's that simple. It's that simple. So, with that said, and one of the other things that I saw when I was training these groups was a lot of times I could see where men were looking at other men's wives or girlfriends in the groups and were like, she's better at this than my wife or girlfriend is. You could see that. And you could also see women that were looking at other men. I could tell they were like, oh, he's got a real skill with this, and you have those dynamics as well. Now, did that happen 100% of the time? No. But I did see that within the groups. And that is another place that will cause a breakdown in the community, clan, tribe, group, whatever, is the fact of you're going to have sexual tensions between the races in a closed community like that. So those are things you have to take into account. Now, you may not be of that mindset. You may be completely in love with your significant other, and your significant other might be of that mindset where they're not wandering. They don't have wandering eyes. But that doesn't mean that somebody else, if you're a man, that doesn't mean another woman's not going to look at you and be like, ooh, hey, let me see if I can get with this guy. Or that another guy is going to try to get with your girlfriend or wife, your significant other, and be like, oh, hey, she's, I like her better than mine, or whatever the case is. There's always those levels. It's like a Jenga puzzle. There's always those levels where the pieces can be taken out, and then the whole structure is wobbling back and forth, and what's going to happen? Community is not what you think it's going to be. And then you have to deal with the fact of, okay, Joe and Jane over here, they have a food storage of, let's say, 6 months. And you and your significant other have a food storage of 2 years. And the SHTF event lasts more than 6 months. Well, guess what? Now Joe and Jane over here have no more food, and they need to find a place to get more food. And within a community, you're most likely going to talk, and people are going to know what each other has. And so now Joe and Jane are thinking, well, this couple over here has 2 years. This one over here has a year. People will do what they have to do for self-preservation. And if you communalize the food, then you're always going to have the person who thinks that, they need more, or they're going to try to sneak more, or, I'm hungry, so I'm going to try to go into the cachet and maybe I'll just take a little of this and I'll just take a little of that. And if you get everybody in there, or even 50% of the group that thinks that, pretty soon your food stores start depleting pretty damn quickly. Because it's not just one person, even though the one person who does it thinks, well, I'm the only one that would do it, no one will know. You don't know how many people in that group are going to have that mindset and those thoughts. So next thing you know, you could have, if you have a group of, say, 20 people, even if you had 50%, that's 10 people. Now you got 10 people that are filching here and filching there and just taking a little protein bar or a little this or a little that. And next thing you know, your food stores are dwindling and dwindling and dwindling. If you're not in that setting, if you have your food and your preps unto yourself, you know what you have. You know how you have to ration it, how you have to disperse it to everybody so that you're sure that you have an ongoing food source for a long period of time, or at least until you can move to another area. And the staying put, back to the staying put, people need to understand you need to learn to be mobile. You need to have a storage place for other items other than what you have just at your home. You need to have caches other places, because if you get raided or if you get overrun and you have to take off, you're not leaving behind everything, which is what would happen. Because I see people going out there and buying all these case lot canned foods and tens of thousands of freedom seeds and a vault full of pews and all this. You can't take it all with you. There's no possible way. And even if you do take it all with you, at some point your vehicle may break down, run out of fuel. If you don't have extra fuel, it's not going to run. Then what? You're going to leave everything in the vehicle and abandon it because you can't carry it all. Where if you had food caches or other means of shelter where you could store stuff that people may not have found, then you have reserves, you have backups. And if you're smart about it, then you could be assured that they would be there and that people wouldn't get a hold of them. And that's a whole nother video that I'll go into. I'm currently building a website, and it's going to be a website where you have to pay to get onto it, because I want to make sure that the information that I'm putting on that website from all of my years of experience in doing this doesn't just get out to the general public where anybody can find it. So you'll have to log in so that you can get the information through a login, through a paywall. So that way I know it'll go to serious people who seriously want to learn to be prepared, be self-reliant, and get off this fantasy train of we're just gonna get a community and we're gonna give in our neighborhood or everybody at our church. Or that's not going to work. And I'm going to tell you something right now. Church people are the worst hypocrites, especially in an SHTF or disaster situation. I've seen it. I've been in it. I've experienced it. Some of the groups that I trained, they all went to church together, and yet they still disbanded and went about their own individual lives, because they are some of the worst hypocrites that I've ever dealt with. And again, that's a whole nother video topic that I could talk about. But I wanted to put this out here. You're not ready for what's coming, whether you think you are or not. And and watching all these military-based people out there, those guys have no self-sustainability, no self-reliance. They learned survival in the military, which was short-term, moving gun and running gun and on the move constantly to get out of a hostile enemy territory or things of that nature. They were not out there being sustainable. They also had logistics. They had backup for when they got into a tight situation. You're not going to have a logistics supply chain out here in civilian life. It's not going to happen. It's not reality. You're your own logistics. You have to be your own logistics. That's the only way to survive. That's the only way to sustain, is to be your own supply chain, your own depot, your own logistics department, whatever you want to call it. So quit listening to all these military vets out there that don't have a clue what they're talking about, because their training is very limited. I know. I worked for the Department of Defense in the 80s. I know exactly. So I've been doing this my entire life. I've been self-reliant, self-sustainable since I was a child. My mom and my aunt hated how independent I was. I wanted to do things for myself. I wanted to learn things for myself. My aunt and my mom taught me to cook. My mom taught me to sew. My uncle taught me carpentry and woodworking. I had another uncle that took me out and taught me wilderness skills, navigation and hunting and fishing. And my grandpa taught me, took me out hunting. I grew up. I've done this my entire life. And I've trained people for over 35 years in this. So what I'm telling you comes from firsthand experience of doing it and seeing what the end result was of trying to teach people to be a community and how to set up a community. And ultimately, before there was an SHTF event, those communities disbanded. They fell apart because people realized the psychology of other people and the ramifications of relying on other people for your own safety, your family's safety, your own well-being, when you only have one precious gift of life, and you better protect it, because there's nobody coming to save you but you. Period. End of story. It's that simple. So this whole community BS that I see, people, lone wolves will never make it, I'm so tired of hearing about lone wolves. Well, I'm telling you, whether you want to believe it or not, the lone wolves are the ones that are going to end up making it. The ones that are prepared, not the ones that think they're prepared or think, I'll just go and raid somebody's house, or I'll just go out and I'll trap and hunt, when they've never done it a day in their life. I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about people who are trained, who are knowledgeable, who know what they need to do, when they need to do it, and how they need to do it, which is what I've been teaching, like I said, for over 35 years. That's the reality of what's going to happen when the collapse finally happens. And you better get it square in your head right now, or you're going to be on the losing end. I guarantee it. I'm sorry if this is, people are probably not hearing what they want to hear, but this is the harsh reality of how things are. I've been in enough natural disaster areas to see how communities broke down and how people became savages and how they became only for themselves. And like I said, I don't blame them, because you're the only one that's going to save you. You're the only one that's going to feed you. You're the only one that's going to hydrate you. You're the only one that's going to keep you warm or keep you cool, or whatever the situation is at the time. You're the only one that's going to do it for you. Nobody else is going to do it for you. So you better get that in your mind, and you better start planning and preparing for that, because that is the reality of how it will be. Period. If you found this information useful, Please consider buying me a coffee. I'm not, as you saw in the beginning of this video, I am not in the partner program. I am not going to be part of the partner program. I'm not going to be monetized on YouTube or any other platform. I'm completely independent, and I'm only supported by the viewers like you. I appreciate you watching. Please share, like, and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.